When something awful is happening, do you choose to let other people suffer, or do you stand up yourself and accept the weight on your shoulders? Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We are here today to talk about an exciting, very, very flavorful card from Theros Beyond Death. This is Mega Flavor Town. Now, before we do that, this is weird, I know, but this is apparently the way that YouTube likes to get things done. Apparently, it's best if I tell you to like and subscribe and share the video here at the beginning. So that's got the best odds of helping the channel, so whatever. I'll just accept this weird, bizarro world where instead of waiting until the end, like you go to a restaurant and it's like, how was your meal after you eat the meal? Well, I'm telling you, like it, share it, subscribe, do all that goodness now, because apparently that's best for my channel. Now, let us dive into what we're here to talk about today. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start off from the historical past of Magic, and we will work our way to today's spoiler card. So the first thing that we're gonna talk about is Funeral March. This is an old piece of junk. Like, let's be real. Just so everybody knows exactly what we're talking about overall, we're gonna be focusing on creature sacrificing in Magic the Gathering, specifically enchantments or other spells that force your opponent to sacrifice creatures. When I went to do research for this video, there are pages upon pages. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of cards that mention sacrificing creatures, but a lot of them actually mention it from the perspective of you doing it to get an advantage. I mean, narrowed even down to black, that's where you're gonna see it a lot. Sack a creature, get an advantage. But we're talking about the punishment style of sacrificing. So, the first card that actually showed this punishment style sacrifice in Magic the Gathering is Funeral March. So this is 2 black and a colorless for an enchant creature that says, when target creature leaves play, that creature's controller sacrifices a creature he or she controls. Ignore this effect if that player controls no creatures. You gotta love the old school wording on cards. If you actually want to know what the updated wording is, it says, when enchanted creature leaves the battlefield, its controller sacrifices a creature. Enchantments were weird back in the day because it would say target creature on it, which makes you think, wait, you play the enchantment on a creature, then you pick a different target creature? But no, it's actually really straightforward. You enchant one creature with this. When that creature leaves the battlefield, then the controller of the creature sacrifices a creature. It's a really weird sort of setup. The flavor text says, the party is such fun, but it's a shame to mourn just one. And that's Irene Senger, one of the vampire family that rules over the world on homelands, right? They're basically like undead nobility. But yeah, I always found this card to be very confusing to me because it's like, okay, wait, the funeral, like the concept behind it, when you look at the artwork, you can see it's a very straightforward sort of funeral march in some kind of like peasant town. They have low stone cobble walls, and you can see a big old muscly shirtless dude yanking the death wagon behind him. You got flowers laid on top of it. I like the spear flag poles. You've got spears with black flags that wave off of it, and you've got the mourners walking in procession, right? You've got the one person who's walking beside them in the black garb, which I assume is like some sort of traditional customary role where they accompany the dead on their journey or whatever. But when you look at it, a funeral march would literally just be taking the body on a procession through town. I think they do something similar in, where is it? Is it Louisiana or something like that? Where they actually have like brass bands that will march through the streets for a funeral and make it kind of into like a big old party. I like that concept. But either way, the idea is that they are taking this body in the cart on a journey through town, and you've got the procession going with it. But what doesn't make any sense is the sacrificing of a creature. It's like, what? How does that work? I mean, these look like peasants or whatever. Are they just treating the extra person like the Egyptians treated cats? And it's like, I'm gonna mummify you with your owner. So overall, the flavor behind it was weak, and on top of it, this card is garbage. You pay 3 mana, enchant a creature, and then something actually has to happen before this has any effect. You paid 3 mana for almost essentially nothing, because this only destroys one, like it doesn't destroy the creature it's enchanting, it just makes them sacrifice when that creature gets destroyed. So this is garbo. I don't remember anybody really playing with this. I think there was one dude who played a deck that was like 90 something cards and it was all black creature destruction spells. I think he played with it. I mean, when you have that much creature destruction and you're playing against decks with tons of creatures, yeah, you're going to get your value out of it to a degree, but you have to understand, this existed in the same time as Terror, right? And Terror was a black and a colorless and could destroy any non-black, non-artifact creature at instant speed for less mana. So when you compare this to it at the time, you go, wait, this is garbage. But then Diabolic Edict came along, and that's where the black sacrifice spells started to actually become a thing, a worthwhile scenario. Because Diabolic Edict, same casting cost as the card I just mentioned, Terror. It's 1 black, 1 colorless. It's instant speed. Target player sacrifices a creature, right? So this is something that could be used to get rid of pesky protection from black creatures that you wouldn't be able to target with anything. It can be used to get rid of artifact creatures that couldn't be terrored. This was a workaround to get to destroy creatures you couldn't normally destroy, but also at a different kind of cost. Whereas Terror you could target, the Diabolic Edict, you had to kind of maneuver your opponent into the situation you wanted them to be in if you're going to try and edict a particular creature. Otherwise, they're just going to get to pick from the creatures they have, and they're going to make a selection based on what's best for them. And that making a selection based on what's best for them will actually tie into the spoiler card that we're talking about. So this is a great example of early black targeted creature sacrificing, as well as an example of the decision making being put on your opponent. The flavor text says, Grevenilvek lifted Vadi off of his feet. The fall will give you time to think on your failure. And this is actually from the old Weatherlight storyline, right? It's actually a pretty brutal moment. Imagine that, just free falling. That he's being thrown. If it's probably not obvious from this artwork, you might just think he's being thrown from a balcony. No. He's being thrown from a skyship. So this would be the equivalent of somebody opening up an airplane door and pitching you out of it. You have a long time to think about what's going to happen when you hit the ground in that kind of a free fall. How nightmarish would that be? And the artwork, the horror on Vadi's face is amazing. I mean, he was a traitor. He got what he had coming to him. But what a grisly way to go. Now, when I was looking over these black sacrifice cards, I ran into one that I wanted to mention just on an interesting note. This doesn't really tie so much into the card that we're going to talk about today, but it is the only make your opponent sacrifice creature card that I've seen that punishes you if your opponent doesn't sacrifice a creature. And that's a pretty interesting concept. So we're going to take a quick look at that. And that's Woebringer Demon. It's 2 black and 3 colors for a 4/4 flyer. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. If the player can't, sacrifice Woebringer Demon. It's a really funky concept. I mean, obviously, from today's standards, 5 mana for a 4/4 flyer that you have to sack a creature to every turn is kind of awful. Yes, you get to eat your opponent's creatures with it too, but overall, it's a pretty rough scenario. So the concept, I really love the artwork here, where you can see him. He's flying low over all these terror-stricken people. But the flavor text is amazing. Each soul he devours adds its hunger to his own. So this is a demon that hungers to eat souls, but every single soul that gets added increases the demon's hunger instead of satisfying its appetite. And that just makes it worse. That just makes it more horrific. So it's a pretty funky card. It's not as tied into what we're talking about, but it was just too cool not to mention from the flavor perspective. Now, there's one more card I want to talk about before we talk about the spoiler, and that's because the spoiler card we're going to talk about is an enchantment that can end up affecting multiple of your creatures in a negative capacity. And that made me think all the way back to the beginning of my days of playing Magic, because I started when Legends came out, and there was this card called Tackle Maggot, and it's 2 black, 2 colorless. At the beginning of the upkeep, I'm just going to read you. This has got some old school wording to make sure you understand how it works. I'm just going to tell you the new school wording. At the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted creature's controller, put a -0/-1 counter on that creature. When enchanted creature dies, that creature's controller chooses a creature that Tackle Maggot could enchant. If the player does, return Tackle Maggot to the battlefield under your control attached to that creature. If they don't, return Tackle Maggot to the battlefield under your control as a non-aura enchantment. It loses enchant creature and gains at the beginning of that player's upkeep. Tackle Maggot deals 1 damage to that player. So this is a pretty, like, when you look at the card, your brain goes, wait, what's going on here? The idea is, take a look in the artwork. You see that gigantic maggot that's being shown there? That maggot burrows its way inside of a creature. And every turn, it's eating away at that creature. That's what the -1 counter is each turn. So it's just gnawing away, eating each creature in turn. Now, when that creature dies, you can choose whoever owned the creature that gets destroyed by Tackle Maggot ends up getting to decide where the Tackle Maggot moves to. But I played it in a deck where I had no creatures. So what would happen is the Tackle Maggot would eat one of their creatures, then eat another and another, because you have to pick another creature that Tackle Maggot could go on. So you just keep picking more and more of their creatures until they run out of creatures, and then the Tackle Maggot crawls up inside the opponent, inside the Planeswalker. There's nothing to stop its hunger, but it will horrifically chew through creature after creature after creature. And that is what could happen with today's spoiler card. It depends on how you choose to interact with it. So the card we're talking about, some of you will have already guessed, is Inevitable End. And this card is amazing for the flavor concept, and actually not bad as a card either. So it's 1 black and 2 colorless mana for an uncommon enchant creature aura. And it has enchanted creature has, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. And it's interesting to note that this actually grants the ability, it is a negative ability, but it grants this ability to the creature. And that means if you're using one of the few cards in Magic that say spells and abilities your opponent controls can't cause you to sacrifice permanents, this gets around it because it's actually granting the ability to your permanent. So it's actually your permanent that's causing this to happen because of the wording. So at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. The idea is, I play this on your biggest, best creature. Now you have an interesting decision to make. What are you going to do? Are you going to choose to sacrifice one of your lesser creatures in an attempt to keep your bigger creature around? We know that unless you can generate at least 1 creature every turn, it is inevitable you will have to sacrifice the creature that's enchanted. Unless, of course, you can win before then. So that's the kind of decision situation it's going to put your opponent in, where they have to decide, okay, do I just go ahead, you know what, okay, I'm just going to sack the creature that's enchanted, that gets rid of the enchantment, and the situation's done, and then the card functions similarly more to just direct creature kill, where you just go, boom, all right, I'm deciding to destroy that creature. Or are they going to choose to throw little dudes in the meat grinder in an attempt to keep their big beefy boy to take you down? Whatever's most integral to their plans. Now, the flavor behind this card is amazing, all right? Look at the flavor text. It says, how many more will die before you accept your fate? And that's Erebos, God of the Dead, right? So this is Inevitable End. You look at the artwork and you can see this dude. He has the curse of the grave swirling around him. This is my interpretation of the art. There's multiple ways to look at this. You could look at this as the guy who is surrounded by this black aura is the one who's actually being sacrificed. How I view this is the guy who's been cursed with Inevitable End. He has crazy, thick, negative death energy circulating around him. He's completely ensconced with the essence of unlife. And he has a choice. He can allow it to consume his life force, or he can reach out to others and allow it to leech out their life force, ending their lives and sending them to their early grave, right? He has that option, essentially. But what gets really horrific about this artwork is when you look at it, the way this seems to be laid out to me is this is a husband, wife, and child. So this man is cursed with an inevitable end. He is marked by Erebos. His life will be ending, but he can extend his life by reaching out and giving up his wife, or he can reach out and give up the life of his own child. And you can imagine scenarios where some people are going to just bravely accept all right, you know what? My existence is going to end. I'm just going to accept it as long as my family gets to live. But there are also people in the world who would totally turn around instead and sacrifice any number of lives to keep theirs going. Does your life have to end 20 years earlier so I can live another day? Fine, let's do it. There are people like that. So this guy right here, he is in that moment of the test of his character, looking at his own hands, facing his own mortality, knowing that his life is going to end, and to actually be spoken to by Erebos. How many more will die before you accept your fate? That is epic level flavor, on top of actually feeling like a really solid card overall. This feels like a playable card. It doesn't feel like absolute trash, you know? Like it's fantastic overall. I really enjoy the concept behind Inevitable End. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you like the flavor of this? What did you think about the other cards that I had to talk about in this video? I very much enjoy talking about lore and flavor, all of that goodness. I will add a reminder here at the end. Like, subscribe, comment, do all that good stuff. It's fantastic for the channel, and I appreciate it if you share the videos out. YouTube loves that as well. Helps the channel grow, and so we can have more people here having a good time. So thanks everybody for coming by. I'm going to link some videos here at the end. We'll put a couple of videos from this channel. And yesterday I just released a review of vegan jerky on my other channel. And you're probably gonna wanna go and check that out because it's pretty funny. So I'll link that here at the end of this video too. A big thank you to all my patrons and channel members. Genuinely appreciate the support that you are giving to me here. And I will see all of you lovely people here tomorrow.